Good morning. It is day 4 of the trip, third full day, second day in Yellowstone. It is 5:30 in the morning. We're getting ready to leave. We have to meet for a 6 o'clock tour. But this is the view from our room. You can see the steam from Old Faithful. It is quite chilly this morning. We slept with the window open last night because there's no air conditioning in the hotel, but it was quite comfortable. Now it's quite cool, but this is just a morning look from what you can see out our window. And we're going to the lobby here at the Old Faithful Inn here to catch our tour at 6. Alright, we just checked out of the room, dropped all our bags at the car. Now we're coming in the back entrance of the Old Faithful Inn, the lodge here at Yellowstone. This is what the Wilderness Lodge at Disney World is modeled after. But we're coming in the back door here because our tour meets in the lobby at 6. So we're just ahead of schedule. This is the photo safari tour that leaves from Old Faithful Inn. I think it focuses on the geysers because that's the area of the park that we're in. It's the geysers.
Before we left, Carrie scheduled a photo tour for Sunday morning. She didn't tell the girls or I, as it was a very early start. Meeting time was at 6 a.m. in the Old Faithful lobby. The tour was booked through Xanterra, who is the official company for all Yellowstone lodging, dining, and tours. There are other tours available, none that start inside the park. The main feature of this tour that made her choose it was that it was a small tour, with a maximum of 10 people, and the tour vehicle was a historic Yellowstone bus. Ours was a 1938 white. We met our tour guide Jaeger in the lobby a little before 6 a.m. and were off shortly thereafter. It was a 5-hour tour that would focus on the Geyser Basins in the area between Old Faithful and Madison.
Alright, it came outside here, the front of the lodge, or the inn. You can see Old Faithful over there steaming. This is our van for our tour this morning. And this is the front of the lodge. I keep saying lodge, but this is the Old Faithful Inn. I think there actually is another hotel somewhere here called the Lodge. But this is what it looks like when you pull up under the porte-cochere. Come in the front door.
One important thing I need everybody to know before we can open these doors is about the doors. The body of the bus is still its original wooden frame, but things are very fragile, including the doors. So we want to make sure we're not slamming the doors today. The one rule I have for that, you guys are welcome to open your own doors, and you just open them like you would any other door, but don't close the door behind you.
Although the tour focused on the Geyser Basin area, the focus wasn't the geysers. We explored rivers and streams, visited waterfalls, and took a journey on the unbeaten path. It was nice to sit back, look, and wonder. This side of the park is not known for animals, especially during the summer, as those who winter here will migrate to higher elevations during the warmer months. The tour was definitely worth it. Having an insider take us around the park allowed us to see so much more in a short period of time.
Typically is, but here at Yellowstone we've got something a little different. We have all these thermal areas that are constantly churning out steam overnight. So as that inversion layer is forming, it's also collecting a lot of that steam to create fog from the ground. Kind of like we have our own little cloud factories here, if you will. but fortunately the place is closed because of the steam explosion that you guys might have heard of recently. You'll be able to see the aftermath of that on the road as it just has cleared up a little bit. Looks like we do have a little bit of a breeze. You can see how kind of all the steam plumes kind of coming off the geyser into the side a little bit, and all the fog's been pushed up that way. Look off to the left, you can see all those rocks on the ground out there, and that's all the aftermath of that steam explosion. But these are bobby sox trees. Essentially what has happened is you're going to see a creek just flowing through here up on the right side. Right there on the right. What has happened is that's all thermal water coming from some thermal areas that are way back off to our right behind all these trees. And all this water's flowing across the landscape here, and what once was a healthy forest started to absorb that thermal water and the mineral content that's in that water. All the thermals are bringing up all sorts of nasty stuff. One is a mineral called geyserite, as opposed to girls are wrong. Anyway, bad joke, I know. Anyway, the geyserite mineral is what makes up our geysers. That's really what gives it its name. But those bobby sox trees absorbed that water and that mineral content, which that mineral solidified in the tree to cork it up. They kind of plugged up its pores and couldn't absorb any more water through capillary action. As a result, the tree died from being suffocated from water, and also the silica that's in that mineral dyed the wood white and sucked the pigment out. See a few more on the left side here.
First stop and hike of the tour was at Cascades of the Firehole. Although technically not a waterfall, the moving water was beautiful, and the fog added some mystery to the area. During this stop, we got to climb and explore on the rocks adjacent to the falls. Mia was all about that. When we stopped, Yanger explained the area and told us all about it. We were then able to explore a bit on our own. The tour varies from day to day depending on the weather and the interests of the group. As there was heavy fog early on, we went to places that would photograph best with the fog. It was definitely a cool morning. The weather was forecast to be much warmer than what we experienced, especially in the early morning hours when the temps would drop into the low 40s. We only brought one pair of long pants and one sweatshirt per person, anticipating much warmer weather based on the forecast. So you will see us in the same hoodie over the next few days.
Our current elevation is 7,140 feet, and it's cold.
We left Cascade of the Firehole and traveled a short distance to Firehole Falls. Technically, the Cascade is a waterfall that is seasonal, but the Cascades of the Firehole is not simply due to runoff from spring melt and will be present throughout the year. Due to Jaeger's inside knowledge of the park, we got to see an osprey nest up close when a female osprey built a nest very close to the road. The fence was placed here to keep people from stopping. This road is generally closed from October through Memorial Day, so when the mama osprey built her nest here in early spring, there was no one around. We got to see 3 of the majestic birds on the massive nest. 2 of the chicks were in the nest, and the mama bird was on the branch.
Oh, he's trying to flinch. Really bad.
As we passed by the Gibbon River, Jaeger spotted an elk off in the distance. This is one of the greatest benefits of taking an organized tour, especially for first-time visitors. Our tour guide spotted this while driving. It was far off, and we would never have seen it on our own. We continued to follow along the Gibbon River until we reached the falls. There is a large overlook and ample parking. If you have more time in Yellowstone, the hike to this falls is quite rewarding. But we were unable to do the hike during our visit, as the trailhead is near Biscuit Basin, and the entire area was closed due to the recent eruption. You can still hike to the falls, but you need to start further away, and thus will require additional time. Gibbon Falls has a drop of 84 feet. It's definitely not the biggest in the park, but it certainly is beautiful.
This specific instance that we're in the middle of right now, about 14,000 years ago, there was the glacial period all around the world, and here in Yellowstone, since we're a little higher elevation, we had a lot of glaciers here. Some glaciers were over 4,000 feet thick. One of those glaciers came through this area and carved out the Madison Valley that we see today.
We left Gibbon Falls and traveled south to Madison. While en route, we located a small group of elk and stopped for a better look. Seeing elk in the Geyser Basin during summer months is actually not common. Most of the elk within the park will migrate to higher elevations during the warmer months, though there are 2 small herds consisting of about 40 animals in total that live in the Geyser Basin year-round. As much of the vegetation near geothermal areas is not healthy, the elk that stay behind are prone to various illnesses. While driving to our next spot, Carrie spotted a bear across the river, and Yeager quickly turned around for us to see. The mama black bear and her 2 cubs were right across the river. Per park rules, we were unable to get out of the tour bus, as we were within 200 feet. The large black bear was on the bank of the Madison River. We watched her for a good bit as she tore apart a fallen tree and then walked the river's edge before swimming across and out of sight. I think we were only the second of Yeager's tour that had seen a bear. Like I said earlier, we weren't expecting to see animals, but we got to see a lot during the day.
Alright, we just pulled into the Mount Haynes overlook. Got a little boardwalk here. We're gonna have a little breakfast snack, muffin and some juice, provided by the tour company here, down by the river.
We are still along the Madison River. The nearby road gets very busy very quickly, as it links the west entrance of the park, which is located in West Yellowstone, to the Grand Loop. The west entrance is the busiest entrance and has the longest wait times to enter or leave the park, and can take hours. This is one of the main reasons we decided to stay in the park. You have to spend more money, but the hours you gain from not having to travel are invaluable.
What drink did you get, Daddy?
Mixed berry.
Why don't you get orange juice?
I don't know, just thought I would try something different.
I got apple juice. How do you feel about being in Yellowstone National Park? Bum bum bum.
It's some parts are boring. I'm really tired, but it's fun.
I agree.
Our final stop of the tour was at the Madison Visitor Center. This building is definitely off the beaten path, as the park system has moved the roadway away from the visitor center. The building now sits in a field in the valley. In order to access it, you have to walk from a nearby parking lot. Most people will stop in the parking lot for clean bathrooms, but few venture down the trail to the visitor center.
Quite the view here at the Madison Visitor Center.
Mountain that we're looking at right now is called National Park Mountain. Story of how its name goes, something like this. Back during the Washburn expedition, one of the expedition sent out by Congress to explore what would eventually become Yellowstone National Park. This was before the park was established. The Washburn expedition started their journey up in the Mammoth area and did a whole clockwise loop around what would eventually become Yellowstone until eventually, on one of their last nights within the area, they were camped out at the base of this mountain here, somewhere in this valley, before the next morning they would take off west through the Madison Valley here. At that campfire that night, they were all kind of chatting about all the things that they've seen, because they've seen Old Faithful, they saw the Grand Canyon, the lake, and everything in between, all the wildlife. And they were talking about how cool this place was. And one guy by the name of Cornelius Hedges spoke up and said, "You know what, guys? This place is really cool. I think we should do something about that. I think that we should protect it so that future generations can enjoy this place in the same way that we did." And because of that conversation, it's often said that that was the birthplace of the idea of the national park system. So, it's a shame that story is not entirely true.
On our way back south towards the Old Faithful Inn, we detoured off the main loop onto Firehole Lake Road. A variety of geysers and hot springs are visible from the road and boardwalks. We stopped briefly at Firehole Spring, which is right along the road. The spring is a clear, deep turquoise with a rainbow of amber, yellow, and brown surrounding the central hot spring. The area has a variety of geothermal spots, with geysers and hot springs dominating the area.
Rock, right here at about 2 o'clock, all the water flowing over the top of it. That's a still pool back there. A lot of water is pooled up right behind that little wall. And what's interesting is that wall is not necessarily a natural feature, but underneath all that mineral, a bunch of piled up logs. Because what happened was about 800 years ago, Native Americans found out that as the water is cooling after it leaves Hot Lake, which is now on our left, and goes along Tangle Creek that we're about to cross over, that was the spot where it was just the right temperature for them to swim in. So they built a little still pool, and over 800 years later, that pool still exists.
It's about 11:20. We just finished our photo safari tour today on the 1938 white bus. Got to see some cool stuff. Just came to the car, grabbed a snack, and we're headed out now to watch Old Faithful again. Supposed to go off here in about the next 20 minutes. Then we're going to explore some other geysers here within walking distance before we get in the car to go look at some other geysers.
We decided to watch Old Faithful erupt one more time prior to leaving the area. We found a seat on the boardwalk to wait for the eruption, and like the previous time, the geyser erupted within 10 minutes of the predicted time. Old Faithful Geyser on the left with steam escaping, and Old Faithful Inn on the right. We decided to watch this eruption from the other side of the geyser. Depending on the wind, you may only get to see steam and no water. The last time we saw both, but the steam and fog did cover some of the water. We had a much better view from this side, and it was less crowded.
Wow.
Just continuing our walk on the loop around Old Faithful here. Came to some pools.
After watching Old Faithful erupt, we continued to explore the rest of the upper Geyser Basin. With the exception of Old Faithful, we saw very little of this massive basin. You could easily spend a full day exploring this area alone. Blue Star Spring. This was a perfect example of the instability created by geysers. The area around the blue water looks to be solid, but is only a few centimeters thick. The animals know to stay away, but they have to build fences to keep the humans away. The colors of the hot springs were beautiful. Most people are familiar with Grand Prismatic, but are unaware of the numerous other geysers that exhibit beautiful blues and oranges as well. They're just not as big.
Alright, we just finished up walking the loop around the geyser here at Old Faithful. There's some other springs here that you can see, and they all kind of make their way down to the river. We just came up to the lobby to the Old Faithful Inn, and the ladies are using the restroom. I'm just sitting outside here on the bench waiting for them. And then we're jumping back into the car and going to explore, I think, the lower or the mid basin. I'm not sure. This is the upper thermal basin. But we're just headed to the car. We're just driving down the road here. I just pulled out of the Old Faithful parking lot, Headed up towards Madison to the mid-Geyser Basin.
When leaving the area, we spotted our first bison of the trip. It was exciting. This is likely an older male who stayed back and didn't travel with the rest of the herd to the Lamar Valley for the summer. After watching the majestic animal, we continued north on the Grand Loop towards Norris. Next stop, the Midway Geyser Basin. This area is relatively small, but has one of the most famous hot springs, Grand Prismatic. Per a friend's recommendation, we decided to hike to the overlook. The hike from the trailhead was only 1.6 miles, but as we visited around noon, we had to park very far away along the road, thus doubling our distance. The walk from the parking lot to the overlook is just over 1.5 miles. The first 2/3 is fairly level with a slight incline. However, the remaining half-mile does get steep as you climb towards the overlook. We had no issue with the climb, however the rugged terrain and high elevation could pose an issue for some, as Grand Prismatic Spring sits at over 7,000 feet above sea level. Despite the crowds, the best time to visit the spring is when the sun is at the highest in the sky. Direct sunlight above the spring really brings out all the different colors. After a short visit at the overlook, we headed back down towards the parking lot. In total, we spent about 2 hours here. We hiked almost 5 miles, but the view was worth it.
This is a partial way up the overlook. You can see the pool peeking through the trees. Almost there. Here we are at the overlook of the Grand Prismatic Pool. What do you think? That's pretty cool, isn't it?
And then there's another one on
Then you have to walk.
Alright, let's head back down the trail. We're just getting back to the end of the trail. Back to the parking lot here across the bridge. It's about a 0.8 of a mile hike each way. If you want to go up to the overlook, it is pretty steep, but it's definitely worth it. Now we're gonna go find the car, which isn't in the parking lot because it was full. We parked along the road. And we're gonna go have a picnic lunch.
After our hike, we found a picnic area for lunch. There are lots of pull-off spots, but Jaeger showed us this earlier in the day that was right on the river and generally less crowded. We took his advice and had a great meal.
Here in the trees, right alongside the road, right alongside the river.
We are going on a trail. My dad said it might lead down to the river, so let's go. Okay, gotta step up this big tree that fell. Let's go. Some bumps. This few little hills. Looks like it does take you to the river. It's a very narrow pathway. Let's go. Here it is. Okay, let's go back.
Here to the river, crystal clear. Just looking downstream. Looking upstream.
The Fountain Paint Pot Trail is located in the lower Geyser Basin, which is north of Old Faithful, which is located in the upper Geyser Basin. Here you'll find examples of all 4 of the types of geothermal activity found in the park. It's a great way to see the differences among them. Here, like in most geyser areas, it's illegal to leave the boardwalk.
When the water first started running over them, it sucked up all of the minerals that are dissolved into the water. It eventually plugged all the pores, so the tree died. And when the minerals hardened again, it turned the bottoms white.
The Fountain Paint Pot Trail features ribbons of bacteria mats that come in a variety of colors, including green, brown, orange, rust, and burnt amber. Silex Spring, also known as Blue Hot Spring, is a medium-sized hot spring with bright blue water. Although it looks tropical, the water's too hot to touch and averages about 175 degrees. Water of 140 degrees will cause serious burns. Mud pots in Yellowstone National Park are thermal features that are similar to hot springs, but have less water. They're characterized by bubbling, splattering, and gurgling mud that can be smelly and colorful. Fumaroles are vents or openings in the surface that release volcanic gases and vapors, such as steam, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide. They are also known as steam vents and are the hottest hydrothermal features in the park, with temperatures ranging from boiling to over 750 degrees. Fumaroles are characterized by a loud hissing sound as the gases rush from the ground through the vent.
Down here to the geyser.
Clepsydra Geyser erupts almost continuously throughout the day. At times it will stop when the nearby Fountain Geyser erupts.
We've got 2 geysers here. Jet Geyser, which isn't doing anything.
2 here, 1 here, another one back there.
And Morning Geyser over there, and Fountain Geyser. So there's 2 geysers there. I'm getting wet.
That's the fountain guy. Those are the twin guys.
From that guy.
It's blowing the steam right at us. Jet Geyser's now going off. We got the Clepsydra Geyser.
We're about to get cropped up.
And the Spasm Geyser down here that's not going off.
Wet. Oh gosh. Here it comes. It's
Called the jelly
like
geyser.
sulfur. No, it doesn't matter. Just a picture.
Boy, can you feel the heat.
This is called a
And I'm getting wet.
They say make sure you wipe the camera after you get through this. The lens, because it can erode your lens.
And Jelly Geyser is not going off.
Oh, that one.
Just came up a one-way road here, up the canyon, to catch a glimpse of Cascade Falls.
On our drive from Norris to Canyon, which is actually the middle connection of the Grand Loop, we took a detour off the main road to Virginia Cascade Drive, where we discovered Terraced Falls. This is definitely off the beaten path, but is very easy to access. As we continued on our way, we followed the Falls River and were able to see the falls from both the top and the bottom. We arrived at Canyon around 5 p.m. We checked into our room and settled in for the evening. For the first time on our trip, we would spend 2 nights at Canyon Lodge. Although this is one of the newest lodges in the park, the rooms are basic. There's no TV, microwave, or air conditioning. We were, however, surprised to find a beverage cooler in our room.
Here at the Canyon Lodge. This building is Washburn. Go in and check in and register and see what room we have. So we're now on the other side of the park at the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. We'll be here for 2 nights. Our last 2 nights in Yellowstone, I believe. Alright, we just finished checking in here at the Canyon Lodge. They're set up with different buildings. Each one named something. We're in the Hayden building, which is just down the end of this parking lot. So they're gonna bring the car and we'll just walk around here. Alright, I see our building and I see my luggage arriving. Hayden Lodge. Quick shot of the room here over at the Canyon Lodge. Certainly more modern than the Old Faithful Inn. Bathroom, sink. What the two have in common though? No air conditioning. But it is nice and cool outside. We got a fan up in the window, so it should cool off here pretty quickly. But we are just gonna head out and walk around and see if we can see anything. Just walking the trail out here, the pathway. Not really a trail, it's not through the woods, and it's 12-foot wide concrete. But it's out here behind the new buildings. And we're going down to the original Canyon Lodge. But it's nice and calm out here tonight. No wind, sunny. Alright, and here we are, the Canyon Lodge of Yellowstone. Here's the front of the Canyon Lodge. Don't know much about it. Certainly unique.
This one's closest.
I'm not sure there's actually any rooms here at this Canyon Lodge. I think it's all just restaurants, souvenir shops, general stores. I don't think there's actually any lodging here, but I could be wrong. We just were in the general store. Now we're gonna go up here and look at this souvenir store.
Yeah, we'll have to come watch it on this side. Wow.
coming. Mom, look at the little puppy.
I know, I saw it, but we don't pet other people's dogs.
I know. Is he cute?
No.
Huh?
No.
It's not cute?
Not cute. Why? I like puppies.
Like 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
So we're out here in the woods and we just saw a rare bird for this area. You don't often see them in this part of the country.